Epicor made an acquisition in October of a process control kind of MES solution that is really geared towards assembly operations. So they do like guided digital operating instructions embedded into it with process control tied to it, hooking up to things like torque guns and devices of that nature. So that's something we're looking at.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our #1 priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. There will always be confusion about the role of MES versus ERP because of so many different features that are common in both systems. The role of MES is limited to the shop floor, while the ERP is responsible for the enterprise workflows. Also, the MES systems come in many different shapes and sizes, some with very deep capabilities for a specific industry, while the others may be technically sound. So, where does Epicor Advanced MES fit? In today's episode, we invited a team from Epicor to review the capabilities of Epicor Advanced MES. We covered several topics such as Epicor Advanced MES, how Epicor Advanced MES and ERP differ, and their role in the enterprise architecture. Finally, we covered different feature types that Epicor is working on to advance its MES capabilities. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hello everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you're joining for the first time, this is part of our product showcase series in which we invite the enterprise software vendors. And for today, we have a very exciting solution. It's Epicor Advanced MES. Epicor has many different products, and today we are going to be discussing the MES. The intent and goal of this series is really to discuss the market positioning of these products, the capabilities, as well as what they might be working on in the previous quarter, as well as the future quarters. We have had a couple of different vendors. We have reviewed Sage Intacct, we have reviewed Kivo, so more exciting vendors are going to be lining up for this series. So I'm super excited to bring Epicor here. Before we dive into the solution, we are going to start with everybody's intros. If you don't know me, I'm your host, Sam Gupta, principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm. On that note, I am going to move to Jeff for his intro.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Jeff Overwine. I'm a solutions engineer for Epicor. I've been in this industry for over 30 years. I've been back with Epicor now for about 8 years. My primary focus is to do pre-sales for our prospects within the Epicor suite of products. And my focus is really around IoT Industry 4.0 products within the solution. And typically, my role is to help them understand what the product's functionality features consist of, see if there's a fit, and then finally consider the demo guy.
Okay, amazing. And we are going to have an exciting demo today. Thank you so much for being here, Jeff. Andrew, can I ask you to introduce yourself next?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Sam, how are you? My name's Andrew Robling. I'm a principal product marketing manager at Epicor. And kind of like Jeff, I've been around a while. I've been working in the manufacturing software industry since 1998. So this will be my 25th year coming up in that industry. And I worked a lot with automotive manufacturing companies. In fact, when I was making my way through college, I worked in a plastics injection molding plant that made dashboards for cars. And my present role today, I'm responsible for the Smart Factory Industry 4.0 from a product marketing perspective at Epicor Software Solutions, primarily on the manufacturing side.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Andrew. And if you are in the audience and joining for the first time, make sure you guys post your questions and comments. Our goal is going to be to cover your questions first before we talk about our own agenda. So the first question that I'm going to post for the audience, number one, post where you are joining from, and number two question is going to be what comes to your mind when you think of MES? Whatever it is, just post whatever comes to your mind. On that note, Jeff and Andrew, I am going to kick off the conversation in setting the stage overall from the perspective of I don't know whether you guys are familiar with the Industry 4.0 community. There are a lot of people hanging out on the Discord, Slack. There's a very involved community in general. And one of the most heated debate always is going to be about IT versus. And when you talk about ERP versus MES, I think it falls under that IT versus OT debate. So we are going to talk about the strategy that you guys are taking overall from the MES perspective, because there are going to be a lot of considerations that you need to take when you talk about the operational technology that is going to be integrating with the machines overall. So, in your experience, when you look at the overall architecture of, let's say, ERP versus MES, how do you sort of think and how do you recommend that to your customers? Jeff, if you want to start with your commentary.
Yeah, if you look at MES, it's very specific to focus around the shop floor itself. So it's not just data collection in real time from your different equipment on the shop floor. It's embedding scheduling functionality to visualize, is the demand going to be completed on time, for example. It's also analytics, understanding past performance. It's preventative maintenance, AI, it's quality. So when you talk about manufacturing execution systems, its focus is really on the shop floor to really provide analytics around performance, help them understand those trends and analysis, and then provide that visibility. When you talk about ERP, it encapsulates the entire business structure from what we call quote to cash. So it deals with finance. It deals with shipping and receiving. It deals with material inventory and a lot of other elements. And our focus with MES is really on the shop floor.
Okay, amazing insight there. Andrew, do you have anything to add there by any chance?
Yeah, I mean, maybe the only thing to add is, when you look at ERP solutions, they typically have some way for customers to do some kind of production reporting within them, right? So it may be manual. Some of them might have some simple kind of integration to machines where they're capturing some simple cycles, etc. But when we're talking about MES, it really does expand the umbrella. When you look at that definition of MES, it goes beyond just connecting to machines and gathering signals. We're talking about process control, potentially statistical process control, capturing temperatures, pressures. As Jeff alluded to, when you look at an ERP solution, typically the scheduling, when you're talking about production scheduling, it's based on a standard, right? You've got some kind of standard cycle time, right? Sam, you would probably be familiar with that, right? You're producing to, hey, it's 60 pieces an hour is kind of what you've got things set up as. Well, when manufacturing starts, you pretty much can throw that standard out the window a lot of times, right? All kinds of things happen. Maybe the cycle time is going to be slower than expected, faster than expected. You're going to scrap more parts than you thought you were going to, have more downtime, right? So things like the real-time scheduling element within an advanced MES solution can be really important to making sure that you get your parts out on time and meet your customers' demands out there.
Okay, very good insights. Thank you so much, guys, for those. So the next layer that I am going to bring in terms of the confusion that I often hear in the community overall from the network architecture perspective, okay? So when I say network architecture, typically when you look at the MES, they are going to be integrating with the machine, right? And traditionally, if you look at the overarching architecture of manufacturers, I mean, this is the personal story. I mean, when I walk into any of the manufacturing facilities, the president is saying, you know what, you IT guys, you don't touch my machines, okay? I don't want anybody to be touching these machines. So that's a feeling that they typically have overall from the MES perspective, because there is a fear overall from the cybersecurity perspective, if you really think about it, because now if your machines are going to be controlled by a software, that's it's slightly frightening for the customers who might not be as comfortable in bringing these machines online in general. So one of the things that they talk about in the community is going to be, okay, how can we separate these networks? So your OT network is going to be very different from your ERP network. Now, I don't know whether this is going to be a cloud solution that you guys, position to your customers. Do you guys typically keep the network separate? Are they part of the same network? Are they part of cloud? Do you want to touch a little bit more from the infrastructure perspective, Jeff, Andrew?
Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. You hit on a whole bunch of things there, Sam. So I think a lot of stuff's really interesting. And I think typically when you're looking at an MES solution, it's probably going to be some kind of hybrid, solution at best, right? Where there's some components that are on premise, some components in the cloud. So, as an example, when you're looking at an MES solution, you might have an edge computing component to it, right? Where you've got a device that's talking to the machine and potentially telling it to do something under certain circumstances. So, as an example, we've got a customer down in Kentucky that makes batteries, and one of the things they do is when that battery is completed, the production of that is completed. We're measuring process parameters around that, temperatures, pressures, those kinds of things about that battery. And if it falls outside of certain parameters, we're going to trigger maybe the conveyor to open up a gate and eject that part. Simple kind of edge type of thing, but really powerful, right? Because we don't want that battery to make it farther down and have more, labor go onto it when it's potentially a bad part, right? We immediately eject it. So there's definitely going to be that edge component that'll always be on site down there. We also see that happen a lot in international installs, right? So sometimes you might have an install maybe headquartered here in North America, and maybe they've got a plant somewhere in the developing world, and their infrastructure is just not as good there, right? So the network goes down all the time, maybe. So in that kind of circumstance, it pays to have that edge computing device. If the network goes down, in our case, it continues to capture the cycles, the information from that machine, all the production information. And when the network back up to the cloud, ERP instance, for example, is reestablished, then it can then pass that information back up into the cloud. So there's definitely a lot of considerations from a network standpoint, and how that plant performs, and the what's going on, what part of the world it's in when we're looking at developing the infrastructure. So Jeff, I think, is sharing an architecture screen here. This is just a simple architecture screen. It's actually really what he's showing primarily is a kind of an on-premise install of advanced MES, and you can see that we can connect to machines different ways. So through OPC, Open Platform Communication, could be MT Connect. We could just get an analog or digital signal directly from a machine as well.
And I'll add to that. So you got to remember, with advanced MES, what we're doing is we're providing you real-time visualization on what's actually happening on the floor. So essentially what that's meaning is we're pinging every piece of equipment, every second of the day, every minute of the hour, every hour of the day, and we're providing a visualization that says, here's what's happening on my floor. Am I in a run state? Am I down state? Why am I down? How long have I been down? And there's a lot of different ways we do that, and this diagram kind of helps us understand the different ways. And we have newer technology that allows us to pull that in through an Ethernet port on a machine and pull that data into our database. And we also talk to, we have customers that have machines that were built in the 40s and the 50s, and it's old relay logic type machines. And it allows us to pull that information from older equipment as well. But what we're doing is we're using a pathway to pull that into our database, and then our software allows us to visualize performance on the shop floor. That's just one aspect of the MES solution that we provide.
Okay, great points, guys. So the next segment that I would like to cover is going to be overall architecture, and I know each business is going to do things differently depending upon their probably business outcome. But for the most part, there are going to be major components. In my mind, whenever I'm looking at any, whether it is ERP, MES, whatever it may be, right? For me, what is more important is the architecture and the data flow, the way your transactions are going to work, the way your processes are going to. So a couple of things that are always very sensitive, because when we get into this whole IT and OT debate, I mean, everybody's sort of pulling the architecture in their direction. Everybody's thinking that, hey, scheduling is my job. Okay, I'm supposed to be doing scheduling. Quality is my job. So overall, in terms of, let's say, if you were to sort of picture the architecture and you were to provide the ideal picture for the manufacturers, where should they be hosting the scheduling, preventive maintenance, and quality? Because ERP is going to have some functionality, MES is going to have some functionality. So, guys, can you provide clarity in terms of where they should be hosting these three processes?
Yeah, I can answer some of that. So, in the software, we have all elements of that. And sometimes you'll find that ERP has that. And with Epicor Advanced MES, it could run completely standalone, and it could be, we could get demand in the form of here's what needs to run from an Excel spreadsheet, but we could also get that from other ERP systems. So it's not just an embedded integration to Epicor ERP, but we know that exists, and there are benefits and value behind that. But with scheduling, what happens is, you need a finite piece of software that says, here's when this job should be due. But the reality is, we know that there are nuances that happen on the floor. I predict that when this job is run in the past, predictability says I can tell you that we're probably going to have 2-3 hours of downtime. I can say that in the past, we typically produce product at this rate. And then there's other things that happen. In molding, for example, you might have block cavitation. So you have a 4-cavity mold, you block 2 off, you're already running at 50% capacity. So all these things that happen day in and day out on the shop floor, ERP doesn't understand the performance level. With Advanced MES, because we're connected, to your equipment, we understand the element of downtime. We understand that I should be producing a part every minute. The reality, it's taking me a minute and a half. I got to produce, 2,000 parts. That extra 30 seconds in a cycle, or 5 seconds or 2 seconds, it matters. So from a performance perspective, scrap, what we call overall equipment effectiveness, or OEE, those assets or those values come into play. And what we do in our schedule board is we reflect that. So there's elements of scheduling that exist in ERP. There's elements that we enhance with Advanced MES that could include things around scheduling. But the same concept would apply to preventative maintenance, quality. I'll kind of give you an example of a couple. Preventative maintenance. I can say that, hey, I want to perform this activity, and maybe it's on calendar day. The reality is, though, I want to understand a much more efficient method of doing maintenance on a tool or a machine resource, and maybe that's by run hours or how many cycles or hits a die occurs. Well, with our real-time application, it allows us to provide visibility into those increments outside of just calendar days. So, for example, I might have, 2 different tools. We prefer one tool to be used on a stamping machine, and the other tool, if I'm doing PMs on calendar basis, and I say every 60 days, well, the other tool's primarily sitting on a shelf. Do I really need to do that every 60 days? So if I can say, hey, I want to do this every 5,000 hits, now that tool that sits on a shelf might only, take, 2,000 hits within 60 days, where the other tool might have 7,000 hits within 60 days. So it provides a different visibility with real-time analysis to all these different elements that you could compare what ERP and MES could.
Okay, amazing. Andrew, anything to add there by chance?
Yeah, sure. Just a little bit. So there's a few things you talked about. So scheduling, think of in the ERP solution. Typically, if someone, all the schedule kind of really needs to take place there to begin with, right? Because that's got all the sources of demand in it, et cetera, right? So the schedule comes from there. It's typically a window of a schedule, right? If I'm a scheduler, I'm creating that schedule. probably for like a once a week, and maybe making some minor changes to it as the week goes on as a scheduler, right? At best, I'm doing it once a day. So that schedule's static, and then that can get transferred to the MES solution, and now I can see kind of the like Jeff had mentioned, the real time impact on that schedule based on what's actually happening on the floor. And then it's up to you whether that's a two-way street. If you want us to go back and update the schedule in the ERP, great, we can do that. But maybe you don't want to do that. That's kind of your static schedule on there, and the guys on the shop floor are going to be the schedule in the advanced MES solution in that particular case. And same kind of thing when you're talking about quality, we can get a lot more granular, right? So we talked about some things you'd mentioned. Yeah, ERP solutions typically have some kind of quality component within them. I need to do, and usually it's more inspection related kind of quality parameters, right? After I make 5,000 parts, I need to do an inspection, or every time I run this particular part, I need to do inspection at the beginning of it, and every so often. Where the MES kind of comes in is when I want to do things like statistical quality control or statistical process control, right? So now
Yep.
I'm if there's measures, like I've got to do some kind of a measurement, we can measure that real time and confirm that it meets the parameters, and things can continue on, or that part could get scrapped instantly. We can look at process parameters to determine if it's a good or a bad part, right? If the temperature exceeds a certain threshold, then that's a scrap part, and we can immediately scrap it. So I think we really enhance the quality capabilities. Of course, all of this, right, information you're going to want to have, where possible, feed it back into the ERP. It may not always be possible, right? So an ERP
Yep.
solution maybe doesn't have a spot to put temperature and pressure information or whatever you're capturing, right? But it probably has a spot to track scrap, so that kind of information may flows back. And I think Jeff did a great job talking about preventative maintenance. That's another really great area where I run into, and they start realizing, whoa, I can actually do my maintenance based on the number of cycles the machine is making, for example, or the number of setups. All those kinds of things can now come into play from a maintenance standpoint, where usually in an ERP solution, it's less specific, right? It's like Jeff had mentioned, usually, hey, I can trigger maintenance once a week or once a month. I need to do this maintenance procedure, but you're not looking at the usage of the asset, anything like that. It's just kind of a time frequency based trigger, right? Which you may not have used that asset at all. You may have used it a lot more than you expected, right? So the where is going to correspond, and when you need to do that maintenance, come into play. It's like you and I, Sam. I've got a Honda Civic that I drive around in, right? I don't know what you drive out there today. Do you have a car, Sam?
Yeah, I do. I do. We have a lot of them actually in the family. So we have a Nissan Rogue, then we
Okay.
have
Yep.
a lot of SUVs, I guess.
Yep. Yep.
Smaller cars don't fit our family anymore.
Yeah. Well, then, right? But you're doing maintenance on that car, right? And you're not saying, I need to do maintenance once every 3 months, right? You're basing the maintenance you need to do based on the mileage typically on your car, right? So think of that as the cycles that the car has gone through, really, right? And then that can get triggered in an advanced MES solution, or even better, if you've got something that we can take it to the next level, where your nowadays cars kind of are measuring the oil quality of your car, right? And then kind of triggering when maintenance needs to happen, right? So that's kind of taking it to the next level, where we're trying to maybe not predict what's happening from a maintenance standpoint, but we're measuring it based on set values that are happening out at that machine at any given moment. So same thing in the MES world. It could be based on, hey, if the vibration level reaches this amount, right, on that machine, then we know we got to take it down for maintenance before the tool break.
Yeah, great points, guys. So I just have one clarifying questions there, Jeff, on your commentary when you mentioned the demand for your MES. Could you touch a little bit on the data points that are going to be required? So are these going to be job orders that we are sort of feeding the MES for it to form the demand, and then I guess, it's actually going to drive everything else from that input, right? So what is that demand?
Yeah, so I just shared a different screen. So this is our web-based real-time screen, and you can see that what I'm doing is I'm associating the data that we're pulling from the equipment to relevant information, and it really starts with whether it's ERP or, like I said, Excel documents. But what we want to do is we want to be able to bring data into the advanced MES system that says, here's our SKU masters, and here's our tooling resource, labor, here's our machines. And what we're doing is we give you, within advanced MES, we give you the ability to then create jobs, and then we can associate, here's this job, labor, tooling, these resources to this job. So when we then start this work order, we have visualization. As I mentioned, we're pinging this machine every second of the day, and we're saying, hey, what's the current status? So now we can provide these real-time visual dashboards. So this is one. We're in a web browser. I am actually looking at data that is relevant to me as an individual. So, my role within a company might be VP of operation. It's going to be completely different information that I want to see if I'm a process engineer or material handler or quality. And in this screen, it allows me to see various metrics. In our database, we have over 600 unique fields that we can choose from that says, give me data based upon what's actually happening on my floor to help me do my job better. So in this example, we've got various departments, and I've defined what I want reflected for me as a user. So for example, when a machine goes into a down state, I can define what color that goes. So in my demo scenario, any machine that's in a yellow is down for a reason, and I can define what that reason is. If I'm running the standard, it's green. If it's red, it's running out of tolerance. If it's blue, the machine is sitting idle. But essentially what we're doing is we're taking data and we're making it relevant to the piece of equipment that we're capturing data from. So you can see here, as this job starts to it gets a signal from the machine, says, I just made a part. Here's how that part was manufactured. We're displaying that data. So this is just one of the many modules that allows us to relate relevant data, whether it comes from ERP or other sources, to what we're capturing off the machine.
Okay, very interesting. So I'm going to have just one follow-up question. I don't know if you're going to be able to show anything there, but my question is going to be, so you are saying that this is the data coming from machine. So I don't know how that data is being entered in the machine, but typically all of these machines are going to have many different products. The hardware is going to be very different, so integration is going to be very different as well. So is it going to be a real-time integration? If it is going to be real-time integration, how much effort is going to be required in integrating with each of the machines that they might have?
Yeah, great question. So once again, the slide that we were showing you in the PowerPoint, about 10, 15 minutes ago, was that integration to the machine aspect. So some of our machines require a connectivity through an Ethernet port, and we're using what we call OPC-UA. And as you alluded to, all these OEM manufacturers have different ways of controlling the machine. So there's what we call different PLCs, or program logic controllers.
Yep.
And in these PLCs, we need a method in which we can extract that data. So whether that's an Allen Bradley, a Siemens, whether it's a standardized OEM piece of PLC that we can configure and communicate using MT Connect or OPC-UA, what we've done is we work with a company called Kepware, primarily, that allows us to extract that data from the PLCs and present it in our software. And that data can be a variety of things. So, if I was on a machine, and I'm going to pick this molding machine down here, and the reason I selected this is now I can dive into the data a little bit deeper. So if I wanted to go in and I wanted to see how consistent my cycle times were on a particular work center, I could click on that actual cycle time, and each one of these are a time and date stamp of when that cycle actually produced. So if I hover over that, you can see that it gives me a time and date, not only to my cycle time, but through process analysis. So on an injection molding machine specifically, I might read various pressures, temperatures, and times. Well, the PLC provides that data. It allows us to pull that in, and then I have the ability to tie upper and lower thresholds to that. And as it falls out, like in this example of cycle time, it's going to visually show me. Now, as Andrew mentioned, we also have the ability to do audible alarms. So it's not uncommon you walk into a plant that's using our product, and if a machine goes down or if it goes outside of a cycle time lower spec limit, it might send an email or text to a process engineer, or quite often it might audibly announce that over a PA system out on the shop floor. So you'll be in the plant floor walking around and you'll hear machine 23 is down for maintenance or down for a process condition. Those are all being triggered based upon the data that we're pulling, through an OPC connection in this case. Or, as I mentioned, if it's older pieces of equipment, we have our own proprietary hardware that allows us to capture that data and then also.
Okay, very interesting. Andrew, anything to add there? I just want to make sure that.
No, I think Jeff covered it. Yeah, so connecting the machines, pretty straightforward. The nice thing about that software Kepware is it's got kind of all the drivers to all the machine manufacturers, right? So if they've got an OPC package on that machine, then we can connect to it. There is opportunities if we needed to put another controller out there to be able to get a signal from it, or as Jeff alluded to, using our own hardware, and then we're just grabbing. Maybe we're going to wire, because really old machine out there, we're going to wire directly into that machine and grab some kind of analog signal or digital signal that tells us that something happened in the case of those older pieces of equipment that people may have out there today.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Andrew. So, Jeff, we have roughly 25 minutes right now in the show, and I want to make sure that you are able to demo whatever you wanted to demo. So you can take roughly 10 minutes if you have anything to show us, and then obviously in the later segment of the episode, we will be covering the release as well as the features that we can excite the listeners about. So whatever you want to show us for next 10 minutes, please go ahead.
Yeah, let me just walk you through 10 minutes of what the software would look like in a real world application. So we talked about this particular screen. This is real-time visualization of what's happening on my floor now. So, I've got roughly, 25, 30 machines out on my shop floor. In this example, I've got some conversion machines, extrusion machines, molding machine, printing. I got some rotational molding, and then I've got some Swiss turning machines. So you can see I've got a variety of different type of equipment, and what I need is visualization. So this kind of comes hand in hand with, hey, I also need something for my shop floor employee to engage with, whether that's an operator, quality, it could be maintenance. But what we have is what's called an HMI application that runs in a web browser, and most of our clients, I would say, deploy this using some type of a device such as a tablet. So imagine having a 12-inch tablet at your machine, and there it allows the user experience to do a variety of different things. Now we have the ability to personalize this, so I can add different content. I can eliminate different tiles over here to the right to kind of give the user experience things that they need, as opposed to, maybe they're not providing a unique serial number on a part or on a box of material, and maybe they don't need that, or maybe they're not printing labels because ERP is doing that. So within this application, we can remove tiles. I can add different things. To kind of give you an example of what I'm referring to, a lot of times, when a customer will identify a product as good or bad, a lot of times that is automated, which means that it goes to a vision system, and my vision system notices that a diameter is incorrect or it has some kind of contamination on it. And that way it automatically scraps it. So over here, as I'm producing product, my number is going to increase automatically. And then if I had a reject that happened automatically, well, it would go through this process where it would read it and it would say, hey, the reason for that is I noticed two parts actually were defective because of, it had a scratch on it. And you'll notice that now I have scrap product that took away from my good product and provided that feedback. But in certain circumstances, that is a individual that is inspecting it, and right there it gives them the means in which they can identify, hey, I had an issue. Now, some of our customers, what they've wanted is, I want all these different tiles to be a different scrap reason. And as soon as I hit the tile that identifies that as a scratch or it had another issue, it automatically enters in a reject of one. So just kind of gives you the idea of some personalization that we've done. But within here, I can go in as an operator. It gives me the ability to log in and associate labor to this. It gives me the ability to then, if the machine has the logic that says the reason I'm down is because on this CNC machine, I had this M code that gave me a reason of why it's down in a period of time of why it was down, then we can read that logic. In other instances, when you're doing maintenance, for example, it doesn't understand that. So we provide you with a link that allows you to go in and, define, hey, this is the reason I'm down, and then select it. I can add commentary to that reason as well if I wanted to. And then now we acknowledge that, hey, that 22 minutes of downtime was for this particular maintenance. But calling for assistance, packing product out, reporting, looking at process analysis on your machine, being able to document, dimensional data, all that user experience can be done right from here. Is there a question, Sam?
No, I think I'm good. MD, if you have anything to add?
Yeah, maybe just to add. So what I think is really interesting is that people, I think, tend to want to do well, right? We all want to succeed in things that we're doing. So one of the interesting factors is when you show the operator how they're performing, then that tends to increase performance. So I've got a great story where I've got a customer in the Toronto area who implemented MES. And before they did that, they did a really good job in capturing their baseline, understanding what the efficiency was just by entering things in the ERP solution alone, right? And they were kind of doing a manual entry process for it. This particular company, they made kind of custom muffler parts. So they made tailpipes, and they had kind of a lot of manual steps where they did kind of perforation, and then the operator would have to actually pick up the piece of metal, put it in a perforating machine, it would perforate, right? But what was really cool is that what he found was when he initially put the MES solution in, his productivity went up 25%, right? Because people first off, I think there was a factor where, they're watching what I'm doing, right? I better pick up the pace.
Yeah.
But what they found is that kind of self-adjusted over time a little bit, right? But they're still seeing about a 15% increase in productivity just from showing the operator how they're performing and kind of what their baseline should be from a performance standpoint. So just by giving them kind of these visual things like this, I think it's really helpful just for operators to understand their performance. They want to know how they're doing, and they can maybe even compete with their buddy who's working over on the other machine to see who has the best performance for the day. So there's some kind of neat outcomes from implementing an MES solution like that.
And I'll add on to that. So that's part of what we do with this real-time visualization. So imagine a large, 85-inch monitor on your shop floor that helps them understand where they are. Sometimes competitiveness drives, increased efficiency and performance. But not only are we analyzing what's happening now, but then what we've done is now I need metrics that help me understand how I can improve. So now we have a complete BI application that allows us to take content and really analyze it based upon different types of metrics that I want to see. So, for example, here, maybe I want to focus on my downtime. So here is a dashboard specifically that says over a period of time. So you've been using advanced MES for the last 5 years. Now I have data that supports how the product performed in the past. So in this example here, we're focusing strictly on downtime. Now we could, there's dashboards that look at things like overall equipment effectiveness, quality, scrap, performance, and things of that nature. But within here, it allows me really to analyze the data different way by downtime. So these are what we call widgets. So now I'm looking at downtime by department for occurrences, but I could choose, and change this to say I want to look at this by down hours, or I want to look at it by cost. But as I navigate down, we're looking at my bottom 5 downtime reasons, my top reasons, and we can analyze that by machine, by reason itself. But on any one of these that tell a story around downtime, it allows us to further analyze this. So I'm currently looking at the current month. If I want to go back and say that period of time, I want to change to what happened yesterday. So I have the ability to go in here and I could click on yesterday, for example, or what happened 3 months ago. So I can click on any one of these metrics and I could go over here and I could select how I want to analyze the data. So now maybe it's by machine. And instead of focusing on every time a machine goes down, I want to look at cost. So I have the ability to change different elements. I can add multiple elements to it. So not only cost, but I can look at things like down hours. I can look at that a lot of different ways. But if I really want to analyze my data, I then can go in here and then I can look at that by downtime code, or I can find out what part I actually was manufacturing, what tool or job that consists of. Maybe from a labor perspective, I want to analyze that as well. So on any one of these, it allows us to drill into the data, find root cause analysis to it, and really get a better experience over what happened in the past historically. And I can break that down any way. Now, the great thing about this is on any one of these dashboards, I can say, hey, I like the way this data presents itself. So I can go in here and I can chart this any way I want. I can also go in here and save this as another widget and associate it to this dashboard. So that's the power of a BI tool. And, we provide that, but certainly other customers use Power BI as opposed to a tool that we have. So the data exists in our database, and then we just provide a means to getting to the data. And you can see here in our system, we've got about 36 different types of dashboards out of the box that really help tell a story around performance, IoT. So I can get in things like mean time between failure, mean time to repair. I can get into things like preventative maintenance, production information. But we've got all these pre-built BI tools out of the box using this specific application.
I was going to say, yeah, maybe just to stress that point, right? Because, think about the MES solution is gathering the information, which is great. But, we're gathering that information because we want to see how we're doing, but we also want to improve, right? So Jeff gave a great example of downtime where maybe I put some kind of continuous improvement program in place because I'm getting a lot of hours where the machine is down because maybe the reason is something kind of stupid. I'm waiting for material. I'm losing a lot of time where that machine is sitting idle because the material handling team couldn't get material to that machine soon enough, right? So I want to now eliminate that. I've now got that metric in place that shows me how much time I'm losing as a result of that. I can see what machine or machines are the biggest culprits for that reason, right? And then can act on it with the overall goal to improve something like the overall equipment effectiveness, which I think Jeff's going to talk about here now.
Okay, amazing, guys. So I am going to touch on this question from the audience, and I'm probably going to have very similar questions as well. Overall, in terms of the boundaries of different systems, when you look at from the lenses of just one system, things are a bit easier because everything is going to reside inside one system. But when it comes to boundaries of different departments, different systems, different perspectives, that's where the real challenge is. So here, by the way, Guru is asking, follow Guru, GURURAJKUMAR is the middle name, and SHETTY is the last name. Follow him. Amazing guy. Now, he is saying, is Epicor MES have capability to integrate with PLM systems for product definitions, for example, engineering BOM and manufacturing info like manufacturing BOM and BOP? Now, my question here is going to be, technically, it may be possible. You guys are probably going to say yes. You can do whatever you want. But my question is going to be more from the process perspective as well as more from the best practice. Now, let's say if you integrate your PLM to your MES, you are bypassing ERP, meaning that whole financial interaction is bypassed. So ERP is not going to know what is happening between your PLM and MES overall from the interaction perspective. So now from your recommendation perspective, when you design these things, obviously these companies probably need to have a PLM. They need to have an MES. They need to have an ERP. So overall, from the process boundary perspective of these systems, as well as of the handshake, what would be your recommendation?
Yeah, I'll start, Jeff. You can jump in if I misspeak here. So yeah, I would typically recommend that integration happens to the ERP solution because it's got the bills of material, it's got the routings kind of pre-configured, in there, etc. Right? So absolutely, like from an Epicor standpoint, our own software has integration to PLM, to CAD systems, etc. Where we're doing it, even checking, right? So where you're checking the PLM CAD system, what they've done in there versus what is in the ERP solution, and kind of giving you the chance to look at what changes are actually going to happen as a result of a change, perhaps in a PLM system, and then that can get sent into ERP, and then MES at that point's looking at that information for what it's working with. Jeff, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
No, I would tend to agree with you there. The only thing I would add is maybe from a PLM perspective, depending on what we're tying to, we might be able to provide some real-time metrics associated to it. But a lot of times, what we're doing is we're using those odometer readings and things like that, and we're just passing it to.
Okay, very interesting. So the next question I'm going to cover, that is also going to be more from the handshake perspective. And I think, Andrew, you mentioned the material availability. Now, material availability is actually coming from your ERP, because that's probably going to be source of truth for your inventory. MES might augment the inventory data, but overall ERP is probably going to be the source of truth. So all of the material availability, and I don't know, when you mention the demand, I don't know if that is also going to have your material, as part of the demand. And if it is going to have that, and if anything changes from the ERP perspective, because your material is changing on the real-time basis, right? There might be allocations that might be happening. There might be, inventory that may be coming in. So obviously the state of the inventory is changing inside your ERP. So how does that get translated into your MES? Because that is also going to impact your scheduling, if my understanding is right. Jeff, Andrew, are you guys with me?
Yeah, I'm with you. So you're right. It does start with ERP, and usually ERP is the record holder of your material management application. But once again, with an MES, we're kind of focused on the resource side itself. So specifically what that refers to is, let's take an injection molding machine, for example. So you've got certain resins that need to be consumed to manufacture product, whether that's virgin material, concentrate colors, things of that nature. If it was a CNC operation and I was manufacturing out a block of stainless steel, I would still need a bill of materials associated with it. So in our part master, that bill of material comes over. So essentially it's saying that as I produce this part, here's how much material I'm consuming. And I can then provide feedback into what we're actually consuming based upon what we produced. The other way we could enhance that is we've got blenders and things like that where we've integrated Maguire, Conair. It allows us to extract that material blend specifically and really get a very accurate accountability of material consumption. And once again, because we have the ability to integrate to these types of devices, then we can take that data and then we could backflush it in ERP. And with that, it helps us understanding what materials we consumed at any given point during the operation in that shift. So it's sort of a way of enhancing visibility and consumption based upon real-time connectivity.
And there's definitely timing there, Sam. Like you kind of hit on it, right? If I'm doing an engineering change in PLM and that then gets passed over to the ERP solution, that change, typically what happens is the standard routing bill of material will get updated based on that change. The existing jobs that have already been, I'm going to say released, right?
Yeah.
Out there will still have the old routing, old BOM, and less, typically when that PLM happens, sometimes the they'll be alerted to the fact there's actually 5 jobs out there that could potentially be impacted by this change. But attached to the job, there's actually operations. Attached to the job, there's material. That might have changed based on the person the scheduling. So that change typically doesn't automatically flow to the job, right? Somebody's got to make a decision to change that job at that point, and then we'll see whatever comes from the job to the MES solution.
Yeah, great points, guys. One more question before we move on to, and I don't know how much time you are going to need for the release as well as the features that you want to excite the listeners about. How much time do you guys need? 5 minutes? 8 minutes?
Probably 5 minutes, not
5 minutes?
Probably, yeah. We'll
Okay,
I got a couple of three big ones we can talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe I have 1 minute right now. So my question is going to be overall from the plant perspective versus, let's say, if I have 8 different facilities, and I don't know if this view is going to be only of the plant or all of the plants are going to be part of that MES layer. Are they talking to each other? Or if they need to talk to each other from the plant perspective, do they need to go to ERP and then only can they talk? So what is happening overall between your plant to plant communication and that whole plant layer from the MES perspective?
So there's a couple things that happen. So each facility would have visibility into each plant location. But with Advanced MES, we have customers that are under the same name that might have 12, 15, 20 different plants. And what they have the ability to do is kind of summarize performance at each location. So what that means specifically, I was showing you before, we have the ability to kind of understand performance in a BI tool. So you'll notice here, so now I've got 2 different plants in this example. So now I'm getting data from 2 plants. But if I had 20 plants, this BI tool allows us to go in, analyze the data for each plant. But you can see here that this is a summary of what my OE is for these 2 plants. If I had 5 or if I had 15 or 20, this would compromise or take those plants and say, collectively, here's my efficiency for those 5 plants. Now, it allows me to drill into each one of these plants. So if I only want to focus on plant 2, I'll go ahead and highlight plant 2, for example, hit focus. And now my data here will consist of only that one plant and how it's performing. So there are a lot of different tools that allow us to, analyze collectively how all of my plants are doing. And likewise, real-time screens, dashboards. I have visual tools that help me understand how that plant is performing compared to the. Okay. Anything you want to add, Andrew?
No, I think you did a great job. Yeah, so you can get a consolidated view of the entire enterprise in one view. You got it. Yep.
Okay, great, guys. So now I think we have roughly 5 minutes, and I hope that answers your questions, question guru. And if you have any follow-up questions, please, and we would be more than happy to answer those. So now, Andrew, I don't know. I mean, if you're going to have your mic drop moment right now of those 3 things.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So what are we working on? We always get kind of asked that, right? So there's a lot of things we're working on. So at Epicor, we've got this kind of kinetic web framework to enhance screens that we're going to bring across to the advanced MES solution. So again, enhance the user experience on the screens that we have out there is kind of one that we get. People want a better user experience, right? So making that user experience better is a big one that we've got on the calendar out there. The other things maybe the audience might not know is that Epicor made an acquisition in October of a process control kind of MES solution that is really geared towards assembly operations. So they do like guided digital operating instructions embedded into it with process control tied to it, hooking up to things like torque guns and devices of that nature. So that's something we're looking at. How those 2 solutions could work together moving forward. And then this cloud-wise. So we've got some people doing some things in cloud today, but we're looking at moving the solution into Azure. right? So that we can take advantage of some of the Azure tool set that's out there. They've got some great, for example, machine learning, AI components to the Azure tool set that we think would really enhance what we're doing on the advanced MES side. And then the last piece is maybe not as exciting, but it's kind of necessary, is our own what we call our machine interface unit, our connected factory machine interface unit, our edge device. In essence, we're looking at creating something new there as well, enhancing that moving forward. So those are all exciting because there's always things around feature functionality, of course, that we're adding. But I tried to focus more on kind of big picture when we talked to your Sam, that I thought that your audience would be specific.
Okay, great. Jeff, anything to add?
No, I'm good.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to have one follow-up question, and I think we have one comment from the audience as well. So I think Guru is saying that will it allow to have customized configuration if needed for a specific plant? And I think you guys already covered that, I believe, right?
Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah, so like what Jeff had shown was kind of what was powerful about the BI stuff that we showed is that we've got the content packs out of the box, so you don't have to make your own, right? If you start with a tool like Power BI, you can maybe get there, right? But we've got some great dashboards out of the box for people. Those can totally be customized, configured, create your own dashboards, go after your own sources of data. Doesn't have to be limited to the MES solution. I want to get stuff from MES, stuff from this other, maybe I got some other external quality solution or something that I want to grab information from and consolidate it into a single view. So, yeah.
As well as the HMI on the shop floor, our real-time screens, all those, depending on the data that you want to see, depending on, the functionality you want your operator quality maintenance to experience on the floor, all those are personalizable.
Okay, amazing. So I'm going to have one follow-up question on the roadmap. So when you said connected factory, is that going to be a replacement for Capeware, the company that you had mentioned? Are you guys going to do similar things as they are doing? So where does that fit overall in the value chain? Connected factory roadmap that you mentioned.
Yeah, kind of what I was really referring to there was we've got a piece of hardware that we call our connected factory machine interface. Just kind of the idea with that specifically. But yeah, like obviously we're working on the connected factory story all the time. I think the whole idea of ERP and MES connecting is a big part of that. And I think advanced MES in general is a big part of any Industry 4.0 project you guys might have out there. If you've got smart factory projects, connected factory projects, connecting to machines on the shop floor, and not just machines on the shop floor that you're doing from a manufacturing standpoint. They could be auxiliary equipment that you've got on the shop floor that you want to connect to. So lots of good things.
Okay, guys, so we are close to our time now. Any closing comments by any chance from either of you?
No, I guess I hope the audience can see the power of an MES solution. I think, again, it is critical to improving performance. I mean, let's face it, if you're a manufacturing facility, all the money, it's on the shop floor. If you can improve how the shop floor is performing, then that in turn is going to improve your bottom line and make you happier customers because you're sending out better quality parts, etc. out there, which I think is all of everyone.
All right. Amazing, guys. So that's it for today. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our quarterly update series. And this week we brought Epicor. So make sure you guys are going to be watching our channel on LinkedIn and YouTube for the future episodes. On that note, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in this afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Andrew, Jeff, or Epicor's capabilities, head over to epicor.com. It's EPICOR.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.